Let's take a look at this new UAD API 2500. Wow, when they get things right, they get things right. And it takes me back to the first time I listened to universal audio plugins, and I was like, this sounds just like the hardware. And this one sounds just like the hardware. After doing the Voxbox, which is also incredible, here's another incredible plugin from UAD. So they're on a roll, in my opinion. So let's take a look at this. Let's take a look at the layout here, and then we'll give it a test drive. Going from left to right, we have our threshold. This little red light flickers as compression starts to kick in, and it goes from a little flickering red light to a solid red light if you're crushing it. Here is your tack control, and it's detanted, it's clicky, which of course in the real world of analog hardware sounds better. And I like it sometimes even in a plugin because it forces you to make musical choices. That's the way I'd like to think of it. Sometimes having your choices constrained is cool. I like this or I like this. And you get these sort of broad jumps between things. And it helps you make up your mind. Musical construction, musical design, pushing us to make musical choices. The ratio starts with a very mellow 1.5 to 1 or 3 to 2, which is great on a mix bus, quite gentle, all the way to 10 and then to infinity, which, special occasions would be cool. The release here is also clicky, detanted, and I like this or I like this, helps us make up our minds. But if you want to go variable and you go all the way clockwise here, now we have a smooth variable release here, which is cool. It's not auto release. You might think it is, but it's not. It's just getting the option between a fixed release or a smooth variable release where you can get right in there and get the release shape you're looking for. Here is the different knees, and there's 3 knees: hard knee, medium knee, and soft knee. And of course, this really has to do with how the onset of the compression happens. Does it try to snap right to the ratio value, or does it ease its way to the ratio value? And hard knee being more of a limiter kind of sound, maybe it's easier to hear. Soft knee being more transparent, typically. Here is the thrust section of the tone section, and this has a very specific filtering of the internal sidechain. So either in normal mode, there is no filtering of the internal sidechain. In medium mode, it's a very cool shape where the lows are cut going into the sidechain, so you're de-emphasizing low frequency induced gain reduction, which allows the lows to breathe and not trigger compression. And then there's some additive EQ at the high frequencies so that high frequencies will get more controlled by the compressor. They'll trigger the gain reduction and they'll control them some more. And then finally, loud mode is a sort of continuous ramp up where you are cutting the lows from the internal sidechain signal. The mids are getting cut, and then the highs are actually being accentuated in the sidechain, which will cause a lot of high frequency induced compression. 2 different typologies of compression, new and old, and we see this also in the API Vision console. New being feed forward, old being feedback. Just depends on where the VCA is listening. And essentially, feed forward is a more quickly reacting, faster reacting style of compressor. A DBX 160 is feed forward. And feedback is much more common. It's a little less reactive. It takes a little longer to react. And in so doing, it sort of preserves some of the initial transients. They have very, very different sound to them. And for most purposes, you're going to be an old. That's my guess. Over here, we have stereo linking and unlinking capability. It can go from totally stereo linked, which is 100%, to dual mono, completely unlinked. And then it is also detanted or clicky in between. And you can set all kinds of stereo linking. Now, it took me a long time to I don't know, get comfortable with unlinking and linking stereo compressors. I think when I grew up, people said keep them always linked. That way the center image won't slide back and forth in your head like a pan man or something, auto panner. And that is true. So if you have a lead singer and they're coming down the center, you may not want independent triggering of left and right compression, because all of a sudden that lead singer can start swinging from left to right like they're being panned or something, and it can be very strange. But in music where the center image is not quite as literal, for lack of a better way of putting it, it's cool to unlink them, because the independent compression on the left and right channel enhances the stereo field. It creates more width and more difference on the left and right channels, which is cool. So if it's something that's very instrumental and the wide stereo field is a big part of the fun of it, unlinking is fantastic, and you don't have to unlink all the way. You can sort of do it to taste. So not only do they have that here, but they have this cool filter. Here's how the filter works. If you have the link set to 100% linked, that means that the left and right channels are listening to themselves and to each other, and they will move together. Now, if you turn on the filter, you get a low pass filter. That means that the lows pass and the highs are cut. So only the lows will be going into the linking and unlinking circuitry. So if only the lows are going in, the highs will be unlinked. And with the highs being completely unlinked, you're going to get some fun wide stereo width, your stereo effects, your reverbs, anything in the high frequencies that has a lot of stereo difference is going to be free to be left and right and dual mono, and you're going to get a wider sound. The frequencies, the lows here will be linked, and then you can selectively unlink them and create just the width shape that you're looking for. Conversely, you can also turn on the high pass filter. And what the high pass filter is going to do is going to take the signal, the highs pass and the lows will be cut. And this will mean that the lows will be stereo unlinked and the highs will be controlled by this linking control. And you can have them stereo locked or dual mono or anything in between. So you can start to make shapes. And finally, you can make a band pass. That means that the lows are dual mono and the highs are dual mono, and the mid-range band that you're creating is now controlled here by this stereo left-right link. And you could keep them also independent, or you could start to actually constrain them a little bit to be stereo linked. And this way, if Rihanna is singing, her head isn't moving from left to right, but you have lots of cool stereo information moving above her and below her. Now, most of the time in dance music, we like the low frequencies to be very unified left and right. We either force things to mono, we mono them, or we cut lows off the sides, but we don't like a whole lot of stereo difference in the low frequencies. So the most typical setting will be the low pass, the first one, where the high frequencies are getting cut out of the linking detection, and those high frequencies will not trigger the compression, and the lows will be then controlled by the left-right link, and you probably want those to be, usually in most music, stereo linked, but if you want to experiment with some low frequency difference, you can. Okay, so that is how that works. The input and output here, this input button is a compression in and out. It's not a bypass of the circuitry as well. So this is just taking the compression in or out. And then this bypasses the circuitry. So if you wanted just to hear what the sound was going through it with no compression, you could go in and out of bypass this way, and then just listen to the saturation from the circuitry of the 2500, and then if you can turn on the compression and you can hear it as well. And incredibly, we think of Autogain always as being a digital phenomenon most of the time. We don't, in a lot of analog compressors, we don't see auto makeup gain. But the API, the geniuses at API figured out how to do that in hardware. We see it on the Vision channel strip, and also here. And so you can do manual makeup gain, which is this when the red light is on, and this gain here. Or you can do auto makeup gain, which is cool because there's something really fun about driving a compressor and having the auto makeup gain compensate so that you can feel the power you're creating in real time, as opposed to doing some gain reduction and then adding some makeup gain and doing some gain reduction, adding some makeup gain manually. It's fun to drive into a compressor and feel the muscle, the power swell up continuously in real time. Finally, there is this wet dry mix, which is cool for parallel processing or just mellowing out even a gentle compression setting. And you have a gain reduction meter, an output and input meter here. And lest I not forget, this super cool headroom switch, which I wish everybody had a headroom switch in their mastering compressors especially. And what this allows you to do is fine tune the resolution and the sweet spot where you can be creative. If a signal's coming in too loud, you can turn it down. If a signal's coming in too quiet, you can turn it up. And then you can even fine tune a signal inside to get the saturation color you're looking for and get the resolution on all the controls that you're looking for. So this is a creative tool as well as a corrective tool. And it's fantastic that they had the genius to put this in there. Okay, so all that said, let's put this to work. I'm going to put it back to the default. And it freaked me out when I just put it on the default and hit play, and I'll show you why. So if you're like, oh, let me see how this thing works and let me put the default setting on and throw it on and see if I love it, and you're like, whoa, I don't know if I like it, do not freak out. There's nothing wrong with what you're doing. The way that this thing defaults is kind of extreme, actually. And the settings that I think are going to be more pleasing is to change both the tone setting and especially the knee. And then also, most especially, going from old to new. So I'm going to do all three of those with the song playing. This is a Brandon Bond track, who is a Mixmaster Wyatt disciple. Thank you, Brandon, doing big things. So watch this thing sort of come into focus as we play a little bit with the tone controls. And what's cool here now is we can we're sort of getting ready to dial in a sound. I went to old, I went to normal, and I went to soft just to start. And then, of course, you can audition things. There's quite a big difference between the feed forward and feedback sound. And I went into auto gain mode, right, which is cool for sort of setting this thing up. So let's look at the input and output and check the gain structure for a second and just see how hard we're hitting this compressor. So we're doing no gain reduction, and we're kind of like really in this nice, mellow, sweet spot in terms of gain structure. We're not being too polite, but we're not being too rude yet. Now, going to the input, watch the headroom and watch the resolution and how we can really change the gain structure if necessary. So you can see there, lots of flexibility if you get a signal that's too loud, too quiet, or you just want to fine tune it. All right, so now let's dig in here a little bit and start to make a little sound here and watch this thing at work, because it's just a brilliant design and a great sound too. So here we go. And you can hear that auto gain working, right? As we're pushing into it, we feel the power. If you turn the auto gain off, it doesn't do that. And here I'm going with a slow attack because I want the transient of the kick to be able to knock and punch through. And let's also go with a fast release, and we'll play with that a little bit. And let's also mellow out this ratio. And when you're setting a release in a mastering session or on a stereo mix, you know, a faster release time will make it more bouncy, and a slower release time will make it more gluey. And you're always looking for the perfect blend of bouncy and gluey, right? So If it's too fast, you might not get enough of the fatness. Fatter, longer releases are fatter, shorter releases are bouncier. So you kind of find the sweet spot you want. I like this setting here, the second fastest. If you wanted to dial it in by continuously variably, you will go clockwise, and then we can play here. Theoretically, detanted switches sound better than continuously variable ones. So anyway, I'm going with my fixed release on this one. I like the sound of it. All right, so let's check out some knees. Let's check out the tone section now with the music. Soft, hard, medium. Soft seems to be the one I'm using most often, but we can listen to those as well as the thrust and the feedback or feed forward. I think most of the time you're going to be in feedback mode. And on this track, I just like soft mode. I think it feels the most open, the roundest. Works for me. All right, let's play with the thrust detector. I like medium on this one. I think the medium, it's so cool. This cool shape that they figured out where you're cutting the lows so the lows are not triggering the compression. The mid-range is kind of neutral, and the highs are triggering a bit more compression. And it's just a very musical internal sidechain filter shape. It makes the mid-range just sound really good. So, and it also frees up the kick, the brightness in the kick, the power of the kick comes back. So I like this one. Let's do a little feedback, feed forward real quick. And no big deal that old wins here. Feedback compressors, like I said, they're not as grabby, they're not as quick, they're not as reactive. And so the natural transients get to express themselves and punch through a little bit. And that is actually preserves some of the transient power and clarity and imaging. And so I like the old feedback on this one. I'm sure I'll find a use for feed forward, but I think old sounds good on this one. All right, let's link and unlink. This song doesn't have a lead vocal. This song is musical and big and wide. So my inclination would be to unlink it. And then if we want to get fancy, we can also put the low pass filter in so that the highs are completely unlinked, and we might selectively unlink the rest and play with the sweet spot. But let the highs be dual mono free and stereo wide, and then we can sort of adjust the rest of the linking behavior with this link button. So we'll link and unlink, and then we'll put in the low pass filter, and we can even try a band pass because it's all creative. It subtle different changes to the sound. And again, it takes a little while to train the ears, but listen how nice and wide unlinking, what unlinking does, how nice and wide of a stereo image, a stereo field it creates. Like I said, it took me a little while to warm up to unlinking. I think I was scared, but it's really, really cool. So now what we can do is we can punch in this low pass filter. The highs will be completely unlinked, and we can experiment with a little bit of linking with the rest of the frequency spectrum. And I like that. That's the best of both worlds to me, is to have just a lot of the lows completely linked, which I think just kind of simplifies the picture, but leaving some of the high frequencies to be completely unlinked and wide and stereo reverbs and stereo effects. So I like that quite a bit. And let's try it just for fun because we're here. We'll try the band pass. I think I still like this setting right here the best to me today. All right, so here we can now listen to the circuitry in and out, and we can bypass what we've created, and we'll check it out. So there you have it. Probably more than you ever wanted to know about the new UAD API 2500. But let me say this. How would I describe this compressor? I'd say it's tight, it's bright, and it's energetic. That's how I would describe this thing. I wouldn't say it's fat. It's not fat. It's tight and bright and energetic. And everybody needs some tight, bright energy in their circle, right? In their toolbox. I think the coding on this one is superb. It's an instant classic for those who love this kind of a compressor, for this API sound, tight, bright, clean, but warm sound. This will work in mixing to mix into this. This will work in mastering for all kinds of music. The controls are unique, but once you get used to them, they absolutely flow. You can quickly find this shape and sound that you want. And I'm absolutely blown away by this. It's love at first sight. So thank you, UAD, for making incredible plugins. If you like this style of learning, come to mixmasterwyatt.com. We have all kinds of courses: mixing and mastering, sound design, composition, orchestration, online training, self-study courses that you can binge watch on your own, or you can come to class, mixing shootouts, remixing classes, all kinds of new courses all the time. Come hit us on the live chat, mixmasterwyatt.com. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. Get one of these and have fun with it. It's absolutely fantastic, world class. Cheers.